So here's a band that I have a a little bit of a spotty track record for. This is the quintessential band where they put out an album that I absolutely adore. I want to sing to the high praise. I want to grab people off the street and be like, you have to listen to this record because it's so friggin' good. Or it's a record where I realize why prog gets the bad rap that it does. It's kind of one of those moments where I'm like, oh, that's why they don't like it. So with that, let's find out if this album is in the first category where I want to grab somebody off of the street and shake them and say, you gotta listen to it, or an album that I'm like, oh no, this is why nobody likes us. Let's dive in. To Follow Polaris by The Tangent. So, The Tangent, I don't think needs that much of an introduction. They, in themselves, are becoming more of a legacy band, getting their start in the early 2000s, I believe, with A Spark in the Ether, and, oh shoot, I can't remember that second track. That's kind of embarrassing. Kind of became a cross-reference, a blending with Roland Stolt from the Flower Kings and Andy Tillison and their two bands, coming together and creating these first two couple of records. Roland Stolt was like, peace out, guys. I'm going to hang out with the Flower Kings for a little bit more. And then we got some of my favorite music from The Tangent with A Place in the Queue and Not as Good as the Book. And I have found since then, it's been two albums that I haven't enjoyed with one record that I really enjoy. Starting off with London and Paris and Calm being not that great. Le Sac de Travail, which is one of my favorite records from The Tangent. Spark in the Ether and The Slow Rust of Forgotten Machinery. Not a big fan of. Then we get Proxy that I really, really enjoy. Auto Reconnaissance and Songs from the Hard Shoulder. Not a big fan of. I didn't really enjoy either of those. And now, after all this, 13, 14 albums later, we come to Follow Polaris. And the one thing that got me interested, the one thing that I was just like, oh, how is this going to turn out, is that this is the first album of 100% Andy Tillison. Up until this point, we had a little bit of a rotating roster of musicians coming in and helping Andy out. But this is the first one that's just Andy. Like, all of his musicians that he's used up to this point were helping out other bands. They're either on tour or they are in the studio. And this is the first time where Andy's like, well, I have all these ideas and I want to flesh them out. I guess I'm going to have to do it myself. And when this happens, I always kind of, I don't know, I've seen where it works and I've seen where it fails. And I was really hoping, because we've already had two albums that I wasn't all that excited about, I was really hoping that this one would be one that I would be excited for. And it turns out I was. It turns out that this is an album that I really found myself enjoying. And once again, kind of follows that same template that we had in the past, where it was two albums I didn't really like, followed up by an album that I really do like, followed by two albums that I didn't like, followed by an album that I really did like. So at least we're being consistent, at least we're finding that. One of the things that I really do appreciate and love, specifically on this album, is the direction and the very clear ideas that are found on here. I do find that Andy really does wander the landscape and really kind of gets lost in the sauce a lot. And when that happens, I kind of get frustrated. I'm just like, man, pick a lane and stay in it. And at least within this one, the overall concept is you have that guiding light driving you home. You have that point in the sky that is always constant. You have that light, like that North Star. You have Polaris that is always there to lead you home. And even in these times that are completely uncertain, even in all this unrest and turmoil that we find ourselves in, there's got to be that guiding light to lead you home wherever you can find it. It is kind of that slow progress is still progress. We are making small incremental increases within certain areas within, the global scale. And as horrible and as terrible as things are getting, we have to remember that things are also progressively getting better. So we need to continue to fight to make sure that those increases and betterments are still happening, while at least taking home and taking stock of those improvements that we are having. And I really appreciate that. And that is a philosophy that I myself subscribe to very thoroughly. That's something that I take very personally. And I really love to see that put to music. And I really appreciate and love more of the prog aspects that we have on this. Yeah, we do still have a lot of that Baroque kind of off on center field kind of stuff. There's a lot of Canterbury play styles and just going off and seeing what flows. But really, because there's this constant bringing home, this constant energy, I really enjoyed that. And I noticed even with the first track of The Northern Sky, we get some really interesting soundscapes and some really interesting ebb and flow that I particularly love. You know, there's almost like this trap beat that comes on at the very beginning that really made me perk up. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Andy's really playing with sound here. And that is what I love. I love when Andy plays with sound. And I love kind of the get up and go. I love the play styles. I love the energy that's found on this. It's kind of bringing me back to some of my favorite points from A Place in the Queue and Not As Good As the Book. And I love that energy, and I love that good vibes that are found on here. So the album itself opens up with just the celebration of like, and I'm like, we're back, baby. We're getting the stuff from the Tangent that I love. And then we come to A Like in the Darkness, which is, you know, that whole social media being lost in the sauce in terms of losing yourself on the internet. And this is a concept that Andy likes to play with quite regularly. But what I like is that we're kind of getting a little bit deeper. It's like, why are we disconnecting from people in the physical realm and doing our best to connect with people on the ether and on the internet, you know, these strangers that we never saw before. And I'm putting this post out for A Like in the Darkness. You know, I'm really hoping that I connect with somebody and looking at both the positive and negative aspects of that, instead of just, you know, shitting all over the negative aspects of that, saying, hey, getting that approval, it makes us feel good. Getting that hit of dopamine, it makes us feel good. But also, don't get cut by that. Don't get lost in the sauce from that. And so it is a little bit of the usual cautionary tale that Andy likes to play with, but it's also found within the music itself. You know, a lot of this, there's like dour moments and hoping and scouring and fishing and hoping that it happens. But then once you get it, you get that big flash of crescendo. You get that big bombastic release of music that I really enjoy. And then we come to The Fine Line, the third track at 8 minutes. And it's one of the shorter tracks, which is kind of funny at 8 minutes. And what I like is like Andy's drumming on here is just incredible. Like, I know this is his first time taking the lead on percussion, and it sounds amazing. It's a little bit more of a jazz bar kind of a style. You know, you've got like this really fun rhythm, funky time signature that's going on. It's a little bit more subdued. It's a little bit more somber in that sense, but I also just love when Andy lets loose on the guitar and on the keyboards. And like, this track is very musicianship in that sense, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to skip over the anachronism, I believe is. Yeah, anachronism, to get to the final track of the single, 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes on here. I love the energy that's found on this track. I love that this is how the album is finishing itself off, and it's kind of like the perfect closing track as well. It's got that uplifting, very fun, very optimistic style that I really appreciate from the Tangent. This is the kind of music that I really enjoy from Andy. It's very bumpin', it's very fun, it's very like single in its approach, and it's kind of here and then gone, and it just kind of ties the whole album off with a very lovely bow that I really appreciate and love. So let's talk about the 21-minute epic of the anachronism. And this is one of the better epics from the Tangent. The last handful of epics that I've had from Andy and the gang, I've just been kind of like wandering the landscape with nowhere to go. There wasn't any build-ups. There wasn't any payoffs. It was just going from one passage to another passage to another passage. It was very like wandering the landscape. I'm waiting for it to do something. I'm like, come on, guys, let's go. This was one of the first that we've had since the big epics from Le Sac de Travail, where I felt like I am okay wandering the landscape. The music that's found on here is extremely enjoyable. I love going from one passage to another passage to another passage, and all being tied up and being realized with this fantastic ending point. You know, like the big crescendo at the end, the big play out at the end feels so earned. It feels so satisfying. You know, this is the prog that I love to hear. And I am applauding Andy for providing us with just a fantastic, just tour de force of music on this one. Now, the copy that I have has two bonus tracks, North Sky Radio Edition, and it's fine. It's just a shortened version of the North Sky, which is great. And then Tea at Betty's Simulation. And it's just kind of a jam session that I really loved. You know, it's got a lot of ebb and flow, a lot of fun times, and a lot of like, ooh, here we go, and now we're gone. So yeah, in the end, I found myself really digging this record. I don't know if it's quite to the same extent as some of my favorites, like Proxy, like Le Sac de Travail, like A Place in the Queue, and not as good as the book, but this is definitely worlds ahead from all of their other stuff. You know, like this is kind of on the same wavelength that I had with Proxy, where I love the music that's found on it. I really grooved with it. I kept thinking to myself, we're back, baby. Why can't Tangent make good music like this all the time? And, you know, that's just kind of where we are. I bask in the glory of the music that I love, and I'll push aside the music that I don't. And this will be an album that I know I'm going to be listening to and really digging most of the summer. So yeah, this is also a really good summer release as well. So, you know, I think I'm going to be really enjoying and really getting into this throughout the summertime. So all that being said, and in the end, I will say, To Follow Polaris by The Tangent is one that I would absolutely pick up in physical format. Man, if this is the music that Andy Tillison can write just on his own and perform just on his own, I almost want to say, my guy, just keep doing that. Like, just put out another record with just your single lineup, you know? And I am very glad that you didn't just go for, like, Andy Tillison. This is a Tangent record. You know, this sounds like a Tangent record. And that is so hard to do when it's just the one person. Like, if I went in here not knowing that it's just Andy, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that it was just the one person. Like, Andy's really able to put on those accents from all the other band members, from the drumming to the bass work to the lead guitars. You know, most of the time he's just on the keyboards, and I love all the sounds that he's putting down. But man, to be able to orchestrate and command all those other ones, great job. Great job. This is an album that you knocked out of the park, and I will applaud you for that. Like, great work. Good show, my man. More of this, please. So anyway, that's my thought of To Follow Polaris by The Tangent. It comes out this Friday. So once you have your hands on it, once you give it a listen, let me know of your own thoughts about it. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. That's all I've got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.